For my project, I researched gender roles in marriage in 3 different cultures. The focus of my research was to discover which type of cultures and belief systems gave women more freedom in marriage by asking the following 2 questions. What are the expectations of males and females in certain marriage forms, and how do these expectations involved in marriage affect the freedoms or protect the rights of females in these cultures? I chose cultures in North America, South Asia, and East Africa to broaden the geographic scope for observation of a greater range of gender roles in countries of different levels of development. The United States as highly developed, India as moderately developed, Maasai as low developed. European settlers in America brought traditional roles where the husband was seen as the primary breadwinner while the wife held the role as caregiver. As families settled, the American economy changed, and so did gender roles within marriage. A clear division of labor was also present in pre-modern India. The degree of freedom of men was much greater than that of women in India. Married men were expected to earn for the family while women were not allowed in any business affairs and were expected to take care of the household. Working women were simply not appreciated. The Maasai people also had strong division of responsibilities, roles, and labor between sexes as well as age groups. Maasai women were expected to do more work than their husbands. The society's great reliance on livestock for economic security led to a highly patriarchal culture. As we see, it was common in all 3 of these cultures to see a distinct division of labor in marriages during the early formation and development of the societies. It was common for women to give up their own freedoms for the needs of the family in these cultures founded in highly patriarchal roots. Women were often submissive and carried a heavier workload than their husbands. The segregation of labor confined them to a certain domestic sphere and kept out of their husbands' work. It wouldn't be until changes, or lack of changes, in demographics, economic factors, and socio-cultural influence that we would see a change in these traditional marriage behaviors. America in the 1950s was a time when almost all people, irregardless of social class, had accepted the companion model of marriage as the cultural ideal. The main purpose of marriage shifted from the survival of family members and community to successful teamwork to achieve goals with love as the basis of marriage. Women and men freely utilized their ability to choose a specific marital partner based on mutuality. In the past, personalities of potential partners in India rarely mattered because they were thought to hold no weight on a marriage's success. Religious and socio-economic compatibility are considered more important criteria for matchmaking than love between the bride and groom. Arranged marriages establish family alliances. Parents and the extended family take it as their job to secure an acceptable spouse for their child. Like arranged marriages of India, many Maasai fathers turn to marriage as a way to secure their child's future. They believe that securing their daughter in a trusted, well-connected family with economic and social security. A Maasai girl is not able to choose whom she is going to marry. Usually their father has a good friend with a son, and the fathers negotiate and decide on a date to marry off their children without consent. When we compare these 3 cultures, we see that economics play a role in determining who to marry. The main difference with the more developed American societies is that the purpose for marriage shifted from being a means for survival. Unlike the poverty-stricken Maasai, American women could choose who to marry based on personal interest and love because a spouse wasn't necessary for survival. Indian women, while formerly having essentially no say in their arranged marriages, would eventually gain more freedom of preference in partner selection. The importance of class endogamy limits a woman's potential husbands, but she is consulted before any decision is made. Because of the poverty of Maasai, marriage has always been an attempt of a father to secure himself and his daughter financially. To this day, Maasai women are forced to live with and are dependent on a family and husband she did not choose. Age of marriage is an important factor in determining the freedom of women. In the U.S., the age of marriage has increased substantially since the 1950s when half of women married in their teen years. This is due to stronger commitments in career and delaying marriage for education. This shows the freedom modern American women have in deciding when they want to be married based on their individual goals and expectations in marriage. It is the woman's decision that has led to an increase in her age at marriage. ages of marriage has been significantly lower in India during the 19th century when compared with American marriages because of the prevalence of child marriages. Many young girls joined their husbands as young as 11 or 12, and their situation was often miserable. Legislation abolishing child marriages has been established since. Typically, a Maasai girl is circumcised between the ages of 11 and 13 and soon afterwards married off in exchange for cattle. Unlike the abandonment of child marriages in India, early marriages continue in the Maasai culture. Because of the pastoral Maasai culture's inability to modernize, they are faced with increasing poverty, thus early marriage of daughters is prevalent. Again, we see how social and economic factors in development of a culture play a large role in a woman's age of marriage. The common trend that emerges is that the lower the age of marriage, the less empowerment of women. American women's ability to choose education over motherhood has increased the average age of marriage. Young Indian girls formerly experienced dramatic restrictions and mistreatment within their marriages because of the legality of child marriages. Acquisition of legislation has allowed for women of India to be free from these difficult marital conditions. While age at marriage has risen slowly, largely due to declines in child marriages, the mean age at marriage remains below 20. Maasai girls continue to be wed at very young ages with very little of a voice to be heard globally. Industrialization and feminist movements in the U.S. has allowed for more women to join the workforce. Many more women today have the same career opportunities as their husbands. This has caused the specialization of roles associated with marriage to decline, along with women's reliance on their husbands' paychecks. Increasingly vital for marriage in India today are the qualifications and qualities of individuals. This means education and employment are greatly emphasized. Because of the decline in importance of ancestral status and increase in importance of education and employment, the range of potential partners has widened for many women. The Maasai culture is starkly against women's education. They are scared to educate their women in fear that they will gain knowledge of their rights and have the confidence and independence to stand up for themselves. As we see, a wife's ability for education and employment outside the home brings great freedom to women. Traditional gender roles in terms of division of labor and segregation are reversed in a marriage. Through industrialization and feminist movements, American women have been able to experience increased economic freedom and power within their households. The education of Indian women brings them a much larger scope in potential partners. They have an equal advantage with men in choosing who and when to marry. The Maasai women remain repressed educationally, denied their basic human rights as they maintain their traditional nomadic lifestyles. While monogamy is the traditional practice in American and Indian marriages, both polygamous and monogamous relationships exist within the Maasai people. Relative to national levels, polygamous marriages account for a significantly higher proportion of Maasai marriage, accounting for about 30% of all marriages. Many people assume monogamy gives women equal footing with men. However, some evidence suggests that women in polygamous relationships actually have more freedom. Contrary to previous trends, we see women in the least developed culture, Maasai, perhaps experiencing more agency than women of the more developed monogamous countries of the U.S. and India. However, many of the women in monogamous cultures prefer monogamy or choose to hold religious beliefs that advocate it. They are not necessarily being repressed freedom. Additionally, many women in polygamous relationships in the Maasai culture experience less freedom than those in monogamous relationships of their same culture. For the Maasai pastoralist man, more wives mean more children and extended networks of reciprocity. The multiple wives are often seen as a means for more labor and more children to support them financially. Because of their ability to marry and remarry multiple wives, Maasai men are rarely ever single. However, because women are much younger upon marriage, they often become widows, and it is understood that they are not allowed to remarry. We see that there are potential restrictions of a wife's agency in both monogamous and polygamous relationships. For the Maasai culture, however, polygamy restricts the wife to a submissive creature. There has been an increase in divorce rate in America. This represents an important switch from government support of marriage as a lifetime commitment to an endorsement of individual autonomy and freedom that is present in marriage today. Divorces were once a rare phenomenon among Indian marriages. With the advancement of time, spread of education, and human rights activists, divorce has become a way to break free from the marital confines for many women. Maasai women are rarely even allowed to divorce, except in the most serious cases of physical abuse, and will never be allowed to marry again. Increase in divorce rates don't necessarily portray an increase in unhappiness in marriage. In many cases, women are experiencing greater autonomy in marriages and are able to escape unwanted marriages. The U.S. has a relative ease in divorcing their partner legally. Indian marriages have also been on the divorces have also been on the rise, showing greater freedom in marriages. Maasai women are basically confined to marriage until death, with essentially no way out unless severely mistreated. Historically, we see the American culture as experiencing the biggest shift in demographics, economics, and socio-cultural influences. We see the changing culture in India slowly adapting to the Western culture of the highly developed United States. However, as the rest of the world develops, the Maasai culture maintains its traditional ways, increasing their poverty and marginalization. Similar to the trends in development are women's potential for freedom and protection of rights within their marriages. The United States' desegregation of division of labor and ability of women to be educated and work outside the home allows for wives to be on equal footing with their husbands in a less patriarchal society. Women are encouraged to choose who and when they wish to marry, and the laws allow for ease of divorce. Women of India, who were once victims of child marriages and strict arranged marriages, are now encouraged to gain education and allowed to be choosy with whom they consider marrying. The Maasai has had little impact by the modern world and keep their traditional lifestyle and marriage expectations. In this process of preserving their culture, however, the Maasai have come to embrace a system that denies women's basic human rights as portrayed in their freedomless marriages. Some cultures have developed marriage to encourage equality between the sexes, others simply change their expected roles, and some to remain or become gender oppressive. Specific gender roles in marriage seem to be ever-changing, but it seems certain that as long as there exist gender disparities, marriage will never cease to be a topic for investigation.